Joe Johnson's career was absolutely great. Joe put up north of 25 points on seemingly a nightly basis during his prime, on some very good ball clubs, with a career lasting over 15 seasons. Joe had as many all-star appearances as stars like Tracy McGrady, Grant Hill, Scottie Pippen, and Kevin McHale. Joe Johnson is more than deserving of a heaping amount of recognition of how talented he really was. In actuality, Joe was never even close to a hyped-up player, never coming close to top 10 in jersey sales for any given year of his career. I mean, in a league where clout seemingly grows on trees, and even the scrubbiest players out there have millions of followers, what is it about ISO Joe that always kept him out of the limelight? I mean, this guy's numbers had to be a fluke, right? I mean, how could a guy ball out on winning teams like that, and he's less known than plenty of bench players? Today we're going to answer that. Welcome to NBA Files. Joe's story starts back in Little Rock, Arkansas. As most kids who grew up to be professionals, Joe was always much better than his competition his own age. Joe was set to continue dominating at Little Rock Central High School, and that he did. He was an absolute star throughout high school, and good recognition in the summer circuit as well. Joe climbed the ranks amongst the top players in the nation on the best team in Arkansas. Throughout all the success, coaches and teammates said that he would never speak to anyone like he was better than them, even when he was. Joe was a rather quiet and relaxed guy. When the high school days were up, Joe had the power in his hands to pick and choose where he wanted to go for school from a number of D1 programs. He stayed home to play for the local team, the University of Arkansas's Razorbacks. Joe's run for the Razorbacks was very solid, in 2 years averaging 15 a game on some very good shooting splits, with an All-SEC second-round selection, an SEC All-Tournament team selection, and an All-American honorable mention. This was all the college Joe needed, as he cut his time short and declared for the NBA draft after just 2 years, where he was selected 10th overall by the Boston Celtics in the 2001 NBA draft. Let's pause this right here. We all know the title of the video and what we're trying to find. So far, I've got to do some of Joe's stories prior to the NBA, and let's be honest, his story is boring. I mean, he's from possibly the least interesting city in America. Like, nobody cares about Little Rock. He had a solid run in high school, but there was no big story or anything that came out of it. He stayed home for college and put up 15 a game, and got selected in the middle of the first round. I mean, I know the meat and potatoes is this NBA run, but goddamn, this is uneventful. The start of his rookie year was equally as interesting. He split time between coming off the bench and starting for the Celtics, and never really found his footing. If seeing Joe in a Boston uniform is a new sight to you, I'll let you know you're not alone, because he only played 48 games this year before he was shipped to the Phoenix Suns for a first and a couple guys that you've probably never heard of. The Suns immediately were a slightly worse team, but they gave Joe a much bigger role as a full-time starter. Joe finished his rookie year with an average of 7 a game, but he was put into a very tough and uncomfortable position for a young player to be in. Joe's first year and a half at Phoenix was rather inconsistent. The team at times looked great, but other times they would come crashing down to earth. With the team taking a big step forward in sophomore year, they took a major fall the following. But this was not all bad for Phoenix. With a surplus of meaningless games to be played, they had plenty of minutes to toss to their young guns, and they made the absolute most of it. Joe's third year would see him breaking out in a major way, upping his scoring to 16 a game, along with the emergence of other key players like Amare, Stoudamire, and Sean Marion. The Suns started to see the foundation of something to come as they made an enormous splash in free agency, reacquiring all-star guard Steve Nash. Along with another nice pickup of Quentin Richardson, this was all the Suns needed to go from a sub-30 win team to a full-on championship contender. This team offensively was absolutely deadly, infamously known as the 7 seconds or less Suns. With one of the deadliest pick-and-roll combos in the NBA, and Joe Johnson blossoming into an incredible ISO scorer, all surrounded by knockdown shooters, this looked much more like a 2021 team than a 2005 team. I mean, this year really clicked, with the Suns grabbing the first seed with a ridiculous 62-20 record, 33 games higher than the prior year. They ran through the West until they ran into the San Antonio Spurs in the Western Conference Finals. The Spurs really were the only team that had the weapons to compete with these guys, and vice versa. I mean, they were each loaded in the post, at the guard spot, and on the wings. This was expected to be an all-out brawl, but in very disappointing fashion, the Spurs made quick work of them. The Spurs jumped out to a 3-0 lead before winning in 5 games, but this was a lot more intense having watched the series back than it may look on paper. I mean, there wasn't a single game that was decided by more than 10 points in this series, and this honestly felt like a battle between two titans. The Sun squad who could run and score with the best of them, and the grit and grind Spurs gritting and grinding to the NBA championship. After this year, Joe was entering restricted free agency for the first time, and after a tremendous season at only 23 years old, Joe was expecting a payday, but he felt very insulted when the Suns immediately tried to lowball him. Looking for a bigger bag and a bigger role, Joe signed with the Atlanta Hawks, who was providing everything he was asking for. The only bad part of the signing was the team fucking stunk. Jumping back down to a sub-30 win team in his first year, Joe was back in that rat race trying to drag his team to a few wins. And he really did all that he could do. Joe put up over 20 a game in his first year there, and jumped all the way to up to 25 a game and an all-star selection in his second. At this time, he really was a top shooter and ISO scorer in the entire league. He was consistently putting up over 20 a game, and was slotting a spot in the All-Star game for the next 7 years that he was there. Atlanta went to the postseason a few times during Joe's run, but they never made it past the second round, with the likes of LeBron James, Dwight Howard, and Derrick Rose sending them packing. After 7 long years with the franchise, which really saw Joe's best years, Atlanta was ready to move on from him and dealt him for a package from Brooklyn. He teamed up with other aging stars like KG, Paul Pierce, and Andre Kirilenko. This was, of course, after their horrendous trade with Boston that set them back many years, and this team was just a very strange blend. They could not get out of that middle of the pack, and Joe and other big names on the team had nowhere to go but down at this point. Joe's numbers dipped pretty slowly as he aged, since he never really relied on athleticism to score, and he still had a few good years left in the tank. Even getting selected to the 2014 All-Star game, even though he probably didn't really deserve it, but hey, he was there. In 3 years, Joe stuck around 15 points a game for the Nets and had a few memorable moments during this time. He was tossed around from team to team after this 3-year window, which really didn't see anything exciting or notable. Joe hung him up in 2018, closing a solid 17-year career. So now you know his full story. So why do you think Joe is one of the most forgotten players to reach his level of success? I think it comes down to one main reason. There was no main selling point on his career. I mean, there was no one thing about this guy that really sticks out or what he's exceptionally known for. The only memorable season that sticks out to me was the 7 seconds or less Suns team, and he was very young and only played with Nash for 1 year. Although Joe may have been a very good player, and watching back some of his highlights makes me really appreciate his talent more, there really is nothing here that we haven't already seen. In my eyes, Joe Johnson is not really a Hall of Fame player, but he still is a damn underrated one.